So who was Koxinga? Was he a loyal general fighting for a lost cause? A king who carved out his own island nation? Or a god still worshipped today? Well, the wild part is, he was all of them. And now he's become this incredibly powerful and complicated symbol for 3 different nations. So let's dive in and unravel the story of this pirate prince. Okay, so take a look at this portrait. This is the face of a man who was quite literally born between worlds. He was born in Japan back in 1624. His father, a Chinese pirate/merchant. His mother, Japanese. And somehow, this kid would grow up to become one of the most important figures of his entire century. So, what was he? Japanese? Chinese? Something else entirely? To really get Koxinga, you first have to get the world that he was thrown into. And really, his story kicks off with this huge collision of cultures, right at one of the most chaotic times in history. He was actually raised in Japan for the first 7 years of his life, but his destiny, well, that was always going to be across the sea, in a China that was just about to be ripped apart by war. So, here's something crucial you gotta know. Koxinga wasn't even his birth name. Nope, it's a title, an honorific, that basically means Lord of the Imperial Surname. And he got it from a fleeing emperor of the Ming Dynasty. Think about that. This title, it became his entire identity. It was like a public declaration of his loyalty. A loyalty so deep, it would steer every single decision he made for the rest of his, well, tragically short life. And this timeline, wow, it just lays out the absolute chaos of his early life. Just try to imagine this. You're barely 20 years old, and the dynasty your family has served for centuries, it's just collapsed. A brand new, invading dynasty, the Manchu-led Qing, is taking over everything. Koxinga has to choose a side, and he does. He pledges his loyalty to the last-ditch resistance of the old Ming. But, and this is a big but, that choice is going to put him on a direct collision course with the most powerful person he knows, his own father. And this is where the story turns into a real personal tragedy. Koxinga's fierce loyalty sets up this almost classic conflict, right? The pragmatic father versus the idealistic son. Except this wasn't some small family drama. It was played out on a national stage, and the consequences were absolutely devastating. I mean, you couldn't get 2 more different reactions to the same crisis. On one hand, you've got his dad, Zheng Chenggong. This guy was the definition of a self-made man. He went from pirate to building a massive shipping empire, and then became a top admiral for the Ming. He was a pure pragmatist. He saw which way the wind was blowing and decided to surrender to the Qing, to protect the family's power. He even begged his son to do the same. But Koxinga? No way. He flat out refused. For him, loyalty was non-negotiable, even if it meant defying his father, even if it cost him his life. And that decision, it came with a truly terrible price. When the Qing army stormed their hometown, they captured Koxinga's mother, Lady Tagawa. Now, unlike her husband, she refused to surrender. The stories say she took her own life rather than submit to the enemy. Can you imagine? This horrific personal loss, it just forged Koxinga's resolve into something like unbreakable steel. From that moment on, it was all about a vengeful fury against the Qing.
So fueled by that loss, Koxinga becomes the single most formidable enemy the new Qing dynasty has. He knows he probably can't save the Ming dynasty at this point, but he decides he's going to do the next best thing. Carve out a brand new base of operations, maybe even a new kingdom, so he can keep up the fight. And his eyes turn to this big island just off the coast, an island we know as Taiwan, but that Europeans at the time called Formosa.
All right, so first things first, he had to consolidate his power. And this map here really shows you the extent of his grip. He built this massive maritime empire all along the coast of Fujian. This wasn't just about holding land, it was a whole network of ports, super lucrative trade routes, and naval bases. From cities like Xiamen, his fleets pretty much owned the seas and were constantly launching raids against the king on the mainland. But there was a problem, a real thorn in his side, a rival power on that island nearby, and they were always messing with his operations. And who was that rival? Well, for 38 years, the powerful Dutch East India Company had been in control of Taiwan. And listen, this wasn't just some trading post. This was a massive global corporation with its own army and its own navy. They'd built a huge fortress there, Fort Zeelandia, and had a very profitable colony going. But to Koxinga, they weren't just a nuisance. They were foreign invaders sitting on what he believed was Chinese territory. And in his mind, it was simple. They had to go. And get this. These were his actual words to the Dutch. You can just feel the confidence, right? There's zero room for negotiation here. He's not framing this as some kind of conquest. He's calling it a reclamation. He's basically saying, I'm the rightful master of this island, and I'm here to kick out a colonial power. And the thing is, he had the army to back it all up. And so, after a pretty brutal 9-month siege, the Dutch surrendered. Koxinga had done something pretty much unthinkable. He'd kicked a major European colonial power out of Asia. And with that victory, he established the Kingdom of Tungning on Taiwan. This was going to be his new Ming loyalist state, the launchpad he'd use to one day take back the mainland. So, at this exact moment, Koxinga is at the absolute peak of his power. I mean, he's a king, he's a celebrated general, he is the last best hope for the Ming cause. But his time as king in his new kingdom, it would be shockingly brief. And his legacy? Well, it would become far more complex than he could have ever imagined. Yeah, just months after his greatest triumph, he was dead, suddenly, at only 37 years old. To this day, the exact cause is still a mystery. Some historians say malaria. Others claim he died in a fit of rage after finding out the Qing had executed his father. Whatever the real reason, his sudden death left his new kingdom totally in limbo, and, almost overnight, transformed the man into a legend. And wow, what a legend he became. Today, his story is claimed by 3 different nations, and each one sees him through a completely different lens. For mainland China, he's a national hero, the patriot who booted out Western imperialists. Over in Taiwan, he's revered almost like a god, the founding father, the sage king who opened up Taiwan. And then you have Japan, his birthplace. There, he's celebrated as a native son, a hero with samurai-like ideals. And this isn't just talk. This reverence is literally set in stone. Look at this. On the left, you've got this colossal statue of him in Xiamen, China. It's almost 16 meters tall, and he's staring right out towards Taiwan. Then on the right, you see a bust that honors him in Tainan, Taiwan. It really shows you. He's remembered as more than just a man. He's a monumental force of history, and he's claimed by both sides of the Taiwan Strait. And that is exactly why his story from way back in the 17th century still hits so hard today. Think about it. When the nationalist government retreated to Taiwan in 1949 after the Chinese Civil War, they looked back and saw a perfect historical parallel. They saw Koxinga, a loyalist who used the island as a base to one day retake the mainland. Just like that, his story became a foundational symbol for the entire region's modern geopolitics. Which leaves us with this one last fascinating paradox, doesn't it? Koxinga's whole mission, his entire life's goal, was to unify China. To him, Taiwan was just a stepping stone to get that done. So how on earth did a man so obsessed with unity become a hero for all sides of a modern conflict? A hero for a divided mainland and Taiwan, and even a celebrated figure in Japan? That question, well, that's the real, enduring legacy of the pirate prince who claimed an island.